You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @murderinmyfam or on Facebook at facebook.com/TMIMF podcast. If you'd like to support The Murder in My Family and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts for only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. You'll unlock a variety of listener benefits and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated, and thank you to all of our supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note, please support any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family the way that those sponsors support this show. It's with our sponsor support that the show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now, on to our show. In the midst of life's complexities and everyday moments, nothing can truly prepare you for the sudden loss of a loved one, especially when that loss is shrouded in the mysteries of an unexplained disappearance and mysterious death. This is the heartbreaking yet inspiring story of Stacey Colbert, a bright young woman with a promising future who went missing in 1998. It is also the story of the unwavering determination of her family, friends, and loved ones to uncover the truth and seek the justice that Stacey so rightfully deserves. In this episode, I speak with Danielle Nussbaum, who shares the profound impact that her sister Stacey had on everyone who knew her, and the relentless pursuit for answers that has defined the years since Stacey's disappearance. You will also hear from Stacey's sorority sister Paula as she reflects on the joy and vibrancy that Stacey brought into their lives. Through their voices, we remember not just the tragedy of Stacey's loss, but the light and life that she embodied. Stacey Colbert was anything but ordinary, described by her sister Danielle as her own human. A light, very unique, very talented, strong, and full of life. Stacey's presence was unmistakable. Growing up, Stacey and Danielle shared the quintessential sibling relationship, one marked by playful pranks, deep camaraderie, and an unbreakable bond. Whether it was turning stuffed animals upside down or pulling off more elaborate pranks like saran wrapping the toilet seat, their childhood was filled with moments of joy and laughter. She was a passionate and driven individual. Her entrepreneurial spirit was apparent from early on as she took up work-study programs to earn the money for the designer jeans that she desired. The tenacity and determination followed her into her adult life, where her interest in fashion led her to numerous internships, eventually carving out her niche in the world of marketing. One of the most notable milestones in her career was the incredible opportunity to intern at the 1996 Olympics. But in March 1988, tragedy struck. Stacey disappeared without a trace, leaving behind no clues as to where she could be. The shock and fear that gripped her family were immediate and intense. Just 2 days after Stacey was last heard from, Danielle went to her sister's apartment to check on her, hoping to find some reassurance that everything was okay. But what she found only deepened her fears. The front door was wide open. The fridge was ajar. And all of Stacey's belongings were still in her place. Her purse, her keys, everything was left behind. It was almost as if she had stepped out momentarily but never returned. Danielle knew that in that moment, something was terribly wrong. Stacey's case is one of heartbreak, one that illustrates the pain, anguish, and relentless uncertainty that families of the missing and murdered face every single day. It is my hope that by shining light on this case, we can create the pressure and awareness needed to encourage those who know what happened to Stacey to come forward. The person responsible for her murder must be held accountable for their actions, and Stacey's family deserves their day in court. In the years since Stacey's remains were discovered, the investigation has been facing challenges. Paula talks about the frustration that comes with the police's certainty about the perpetrator, but the case remaining unsolved due to a lack of evidence. There are suspicions that individuals close to the perpetrator hold crucial information but have either been too afraid or unwilling to step forward. This haunting reality has only fueled Stacey's family and friends' resolve to continue to fight for her and for justice, which led them to launch the campaign, Finishing Stacey's Fight. The call to action from this campaign is clear and powerful. It's not just about seeking justice for Stacey, it is a movement to educate the public on the importance of speaking up when witnessing suspicious activity, and it is a call for collective vigilance and compassion. Stacey's story is a stark reminder that silence can be as harmful as the crime itself. Danielle poignantly reminds us that every shared story, every act of engagement, and every donation brings them one step closer to resolution. The campaign shows their enduring love and commitment to Stacey, and it shows a family and a friend group who refuse to let her memory fade away without answers. For those looking to take part in this fight, you can visit the GoFundMe for Finishing Stacey's Fight and follow the social media links in the show notes. Share Stacey's story, contribute if you're able, and together we can be the voices that seek and demand justice for Stacey.
Hi, my name is Danielle Nussbaum, and I am Stacey Colbert's sister.
And Paula, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Paula. I was lucky enough to be one of Stacey's sorority sisters, and I am one of the primary admins and founder of Finishing Stacey's Fight.
Welcome to both of you. Welcome to the Murder in My Family, and thank you, listeners, for being here today. We've got another case that needs your attention and your assistance. Today, we're joined by Danielle and Paula. Danielle is going to tell us her sister Stacey's story. But before we get into what happened to Stacey, I want you to hear from Danielle and Paula about Stacey, about who Stacey is, about what Stacey means to you, what it was like growing up with her, what was she into, what kind of music did she like, anything that you want to share, so that my listeners can get a good sense of who Stacey was.
So Stacey was her own human. She was a light. She was very unique, very talented. She was a very strong person. And so growing up, we were only 2 years and 3 months apart. And I was the older sister. And she was this full of life little kid when we were in elementary school. She had her own ideas about the world. We were as opposite on the spectrum as you could get. She had some difficulties as a child. She would never want me to ever publicly say this. She struggled with her vision. She was one in so many people who could control her eyes, but she didn't want to ever admit that she wasn't a part of mainstream, that anything held her back, that she was a fighter and she wanted just to be like the rest of everybody. And she loved life. She loved doing, she loved going. When we were kids, her room was very neat and organized. And we had the typical sister relationship. We would play little pranks on each other. She would come into my room. I had one of those little shelves hanging above my bed. I was into stuffed animals. She was really into Barbie dolls and Barbies and girly girl stuff as a kid. And so she would come into my room, and my room was a lot less organized. I tend to let things fall where they may. So I didn't tend to notice some of those smaller things that she would do. So like periodically she would turn every other stuffed animal in my shelf upside down. It's kind of some of the pranks. Now I will say that she graduated to bigger pranks when I was a little bit older, like saran wrapping my toilet and things like that. But things are all in good fun mostly. And I always looked before I left. So I was okay there too. Let me go back to elementary school. She ran one of their fundraising races, and she won second place and got a helicopter ride. She was trying to think. She and I, we did everything together. We had a really close family. We had Sunday dinners together. That was my mom's one mandatory thing. She was always tagging along me and my friends until she became more active with her. She had the best friends. Her and our backdoor neighbor, our fence, we actually had a door between our two back doors. And her and the family behind us, her and their little girl, Katie, she's not so little anymore, would go back and forth and play during the day. And me being the older sister, they would have so much fun. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, you guys are so immature. Like we were kids. And she'd come back through the house she'd probably have all of our pots and pans and have sticks started banging on them and her friends, and they would all go, we're immature. I rolled my eyes. We're always like, we had that kind of back and forth going on. And she always knew what she wanted. She was very intentional with what she did, with what her time. And even in high school, where she would do one of those work studies where she would go to school half day and then have a job. And we tease her. She always wanted the brand name jeans. So mom's like, okay, this is your budget. If you want anything else, you need to earn it. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll earn it. That's what I'll find. That's what I need to do. That's what I'll do. And initially she wanted to go into like fashion of some sort. And even in high school, she met somebody who could read her colors based on different clothing materials that went up. And she had lots of different really cool internships. And she's okay, let me try this. And so when we were in high school, we moved to Atlanta, and I'm not going in any order. I'm going all over the place, and I apologize if anyone's trying to follow a timeline here. But when she was still in high school, my parents moved to Atlanta. I went to Ohio State University, and I thought I was going to solve the singing cell because I went in vocal performance and molecular genetics. But in college, you change a million times. I really had no idea, but she really knew. She's like, I don't think working with models is for me. And like a person hair, I don't think doing hair is for me. And she went to the Olympics. She, very close friends of the family, happened to work for the executives in McDonald's. And she just happened to be in the right place at the right time and got offered a really amazing internship at the 1996 Olympics. And she got to work in the sports village. And she really, I think at that point, locked into marketing. It was a marketing internship, and that's what she was doing, this business school, and it just clicked for her. And it was amazing. Like my mom would call me every night and talk about it. Of course, at the end of it, I was hoping that like she had saved me a pin or something cool like that. And just, oh, you wanted something? Here's my work shirts. I'm like, okay, thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. I think she threw in a hat that she used for work, but I was like, oh, it's Olympics. That's cool. Thanks. Oh, that's fine. I still have those shirts somewhere. That's downstairs.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. So in high school, she was in choir. She did the musicals with me. She wasn't really a musical person, but I love that she was in those classes with me. Some of the coolest things I think was her creativity. When I forget which age, I think 15, right before she got her license, she planned this whole elaborate scavenger hunt with each car, the passengers in each car, and like all of these different items with intentionally where people would have to go to get them. It was so super detailed and really outstanding. And she had my best friend and myself. We were the car drivers and we'd take the load, and it was so much fun. And then for another one of her birthdays, like we went to Chi-Chi's, and I don't know, those like one of those Mexican restaurants. I think the whole chain is closed. She with her and her friends not only sing for herself, but anytime there was any other birthdays or celebrations, her and her friends would stand up and cheer for every single celebration, all, like for 2 hours for everybody in the restaurant. It was awesome. Now, of course, I was rolling my eyes thinking, oh my gosh, how much more do I have to go through this?
Sounds like a lot of fun and never a dull moment with her.
There wasn't. And her last birthday party, like she had this whole mystery. It was a murder mystery. But the cool thing was she had a sheet of paper that had all of these characteristics, what they needed to wear, what their personality was, and if they were the one who did it. And everybody came up dressed, and it was so super cool. It was really cool. Like I think I still have pictures of that. Everyone participated, and I was just an observer. And of course I wasn't invited to that. I was a chaperone. I wasn't like a part of it, but it was so cool. And then like her senior year, they did the fake graduation, and everybody was dressed up in garbage bags, handed out fake diplomas. She was so creative. It was pretty cool. So like that, she was a light. She brought a lot of laughter to things. She was a tennis player. She was part of she varsity lettered her freshman year. She was a southpaw. You didn't used to get too many people doing that. And we would travel around to UST events. My mom and the girls would. And she did cheer the first couple of years, and then she was a part of the dance team her last couple of years. And so she was really active, and she loved to run and be very active. And her music, when we would go on vacation, we'd always listen to like Weird Al Yankovic. That was like kind of her music taste. And she liked Doris Day and 50s types of movies. My final stuff was in criminology, and because I really did enjoy like your Stephen King's and your detective novels and things like that, and data and like analyzing different situations and things. And she couldn't stand any of that. Anything with blood or anything with anyone getting hurt, she was like, no, like she just couldn't tolerate any of that. She was pretty innocent when it came to a lot of things.
I think that's a very beautiful tribute to her and her memory. But is there anything else that you'd like to talk about before we ask Paula?
No, because I think I got us to college. So she was in a community school for one semester, and then was late acceptance into the Ohio State University, where she met Paula and the girls and the sorority that really did become most of her life during the college years. Believe me, we lived in the towers. Like she lived in what I used to lovingly call Immoral Tower, and I was in Lincoln. It was all in fun and jest. And we lived literally right across the parking lot for her first year, which was really cool. I did try to set her up on a blind date with a friend, and that did not bode well, which is fine. He was a good guy. He was a young kid, and they were friends for a long time, but no romantic interest on either part, which is fine. I think that probably was for the best for all of us. But he was a good guy. She was great. Just they had different like life paths. But anyway, all right, Paula, I'm gonna let you navigate if you're okay with that.
Sure. Absolutely. So I got to meet Stacey when she joined my sorority, Alpha Delta Pi. We were there at Ohio State on 15th Avenue. It was this big, gorgeous, kind of plantation style white house with a 2-story front porch. It was pretty amazing. And I think that's probably what drew her, like anyone else, to the house, along with the great culture that we had at Alpha Delta Pi. One of the big things, and this was pretty revolutionary in the 1990s, was that they had a very strict policy against hazing. It was absolutely not tolerated. And so that was a big draw as well. And when Stacey rushed the house, I didn't get to meet her because I was doing work behind the scenes for Rush as far as getting refreshments together and some of the other things that go on. I didn't get to meet any of the girls until we had our first party after they accepted their bid to join the house. And I was not a drinker in college. I didn't really see a big point in that, but I didn't also understood that everybody wanted to party and have a good time. So I didn't mind being the one. It was called a sober monitor. I would just always sign up for that and just look out for my sisters. And there had to be two of them since Stacey was new to the house. That first party, she was assigned to be with me as a sober monitor, just keeping an eye out, making sure everybody was having a good time. And so I got to meet her that way. And I just adored her from the minute I met her. She was bright and fun, and we had the same taste in music down to Weird Al. And she was just really smart and friendly. You couldn't be in a room with her and not notice her. And she was adorable, and she was boy crazy. She wasn't going out with guys all the time, but lots of secret crushes on boys and would talk about boys all the time. But she wasn't big into dating, having a new boyfriend every week kind of girl. But she was a little boy crazy. Like Danielle said, she was very innocent. And that was another way where we connected, and we both loved dancing, which was always great. If I wanted to dance, I always knew Stacey would be there with me and I wouldn't be out there dancing all by myself. And we would do things like we'd all pile into a cab and go down to German Village there in Columbus. One of our sorority sisters was dating a guy that played piano at this bar called Howl at the Moon. And so we would all pile into this car. And I remember one time Stacey sitting on my lap because we were trying to save money. We were poor and just laughing the whole way there. And then you get to the bar and they only know so many songs and they only have so many jokes. But your friend's dating the guy, so you're there for hours and hours. So we would find other fun ways to entertain ourselves by trying to guess what song they were going to do next. And just, I don't know, we just would entertain ourselves in other ways. I asked Stacey to be a bridesmaid in my wedding when I got engaged in 1996. And she was there for me. And that sadly was the last time I saw her. I got married September of 1997 and got busy with my married life and put my friends on the back burner. You think you'll have more time, but as it turned out, I didn't have more time.
Yeah.
You can't know.
I know.
There's no way to know. It's impossible. And there's that idea that you have to really appreciate every moment you have with the people you love. And I know that we all know that because we're all living this. But for the listeners out there, it is so important not to take those loved ones for granted. And I'm not saying that's what you did, Paula, at all by any stretch of the
No, I
imagination.
understand. Yeah.
But I think it is an important thing to call out here as we're talking about this.
Absolutely.
Any other final thoughts about Stacey as a person? Anything else that you want to share before we get into the more difficult conversation?
I was surprised to hear Danielle say that she had a neat room as a child, because I never knew Stacey to have a neat and organized room. She was a slob.
My mom was really worried about her. She thought, oh man, it's because you expect the young girls not to. Well, she had me, okay? I was the.
She definitely outgrew that phase. So
we did. Once we got into high school, I think maybe after I moved out, Mom said she flipped a switch. So I don't know whatever switch that was, but
it was. And she cared deeply about everything she did. Danielle said she was really intentional. And so there would be times where she would just get so stressed out. She'd be talking a mile a minute and just like a whirlwind. But then if she noticed, I remember one girl noting that she was in our chapter, or not in our chapter room rather, but the dining room. And she was doing something in there. And Stacey was just a stressed out mess. It was exams week. And she saw this girl over in the corner and she just stopped. And she was like, hey, how are you? She didn't start the conversation with, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Nothing about herself. She was focused on the other sorority sister that she noticed had some things on her mind too. And that's something that I wish I was better at, that she had already mastered at 23. There just was no one quite like Stacey.
Sounds like it. Okay, so we're going to shift gears, and it is going to get a little bit probably more difficult to have this discussion, but it is important. Can we talk about the circumstances leading up to the day that Stacey went missing and into what happened when she did go missing finally in March of 1998.
Yeah, she was living her life. So see how far back we'll go before it. But the Christmas before, she was working at AP and as their marketing analyst. And she loved that job so much. She actually got to sit next to one of their executive leaders as part of that. And she made a real impression on him. She was a go-getter. And so she was at work all the time. And she had that January, she got a kitty, Boots, that Paula actually took Boots and renamed Boots appropriately. And she moved to an apartment that was very close to my apartment, like 2.1 miles door to door. I'm a data analytics girl. I capture those things in my brain. And she moved from one part of Columbus to be closer. She moved into Governor Square and she was so happy there. Like she would run, she was social, like work was going great. She was all excited about an upcoming trip. Like I wasn't 100% sure when this trip was going to be, but she was like, yeah, I'm putting together this international analysis and I'm going to get to fly and go and talk and present my findings for my paper on the proposal, on what's going on. And I was so excited for her. We talked probably, I want to say every other day for her birthday that year, 98, which was February 3rd. I took her to Titanic. We watched that. I was like that in that dinner. We did dinner and a movie. And we were all like, both of us had our ideas of what happened at the ending, along with my mom. We're all like, okay, this is what I think that staircase actually represents and blah, blah, blah. We all were like hypothesizing and it was just like day in, day out. And the Oscars were that weekend. This is the weekend of the 21st. My dad called her on that Friday. They had their normal conversation. Everything was fine. And because my dad and he's no longer with us. He passed back in 2007, and him and her, like, were kind of hot and cold. They were both kind of stubborn. So sometimes when you have two very similar personalities, sometimes you butt heads. So sometimes you're not as close as you might be, or you have periods of time where you're really extra close and periods of time where, like maybe in small doses, more for her than him. He wanted to be close to her, especially. But again, if you're headstrong, which they both really were, sometimes you're going to have that. I'm more of a people pleaser, so I didn't really have that issue with either of my parents because I just wanted things to be smooth and quiet. So they were actually at a really good point in their relationship. They had gotten past some of the things of childhood that sometimes you go through. Sometimes you confront the way that you want your childhood versus when you become an adult, your parents aren't like this all evil thing. And we worked through that and they had worked through that. So their relationship was actually much, much better, which I was very happy about. She hung up because she had that stuff going on. And Sunday was the Oscars. And so Titanic was up for all of these awards. And so every time like an actress or actor would be nominated, I would call. And at that time, we didn't have all these really cool smartphones. We had regular phones and voicemail. I did have a cell phone, but it was like a flip phone and not like the cool flip phones of today, but like where you have to pecking on the same key over and over to send any text. So it was much easier to call than it was to text, or it took you a lot less time to talk about it than it did to text, unlike today. But anyway, so I probably left 18 messages about all of the different actors and actresses. And my mom, I think, did too. But obviously, she didn't return any of the calls. And so that was the 22nd, I believe. On the 24th, I got a call from her job. And Stacey was so intentional, such a hard worker. Like even with her sorority, my grandparents are like, if you don't like the rules, then you need to get on the board and change them. If it's something that you love to do and feel passionate about. And even at work, like she was the go-getter. She was always ultra involved and there. And she was a driver of trying to make good things happen for where she worked. And so I got this voicemail. I got home from work. I worked at Cardinal. So they're out in the Dublin area. And so I only lived like 10, 15 minutes from work. And I got home and there was the voicemail. And it was from her work saying that she hadn't shown up for work on Monday and Tuesday. And I think at that point, I started going into a bit of shock because I knew that it was bad. So first I called my parents and I'm like, Dad, this is not her. Like, there's something wrong. This is bad. And so I raced over to her apartment and her car was still in the parking lot and her door was ajar. And it was just as March 24th. And I went into the apartment and all of her stuff was there, her contacts, her wallet, everything. And the fridge was open. There was stuff on the counter. You could tell something was terribly wrong. And so, of course, I called 911. I called the police and they came over. And I had probably been talking to detectives all night. The first people who go through are like, they're just trying to get the information. And then as the evening went on, I don't think I got back to my apartment until, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But like when the initial detectives came through to the apartment, they sent people from the sexual offenses, like the rape and all of that, to interview me. And I don't know, it was so scary knowing that, I don't know, I couldn't wrap my head around what I had seen in the apartment and her not being there, not going to work and why she would leave the apartment like that with food out and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it had to have been more than shocking. It had to have been like feeling like the bottom had fallen out of your entire life. I can't imagine the amount of dread that you must have felt in that moment.
Yeah. And honestly, I hadn't experienced anyone who'd even passed away at that point. My life was pretty sheltered and everything I had learned about anything was in a book and TV show. And it just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. This is my sister. Like, what, she should be here. And where's the cat? And someone had left a flyer, luckily, and had collected, thank goodness, her kitty cat. I don't know, when the police had said, don't say anything. Like they told me, we don't want to release anything, no flyers, no nothing for a week. And then on that following Friday, you can start doing interviews. They finally said, okay. And one of my cousins opened up a shop for us to hold, interviews and start talking. But in the meantime, a whole bunch of people, including Paula, she may have been running it. I don't know if Paula and Ashley were set up like a command center to be able to set up shop as soon as we were given the go ahead. And we held a vigil. There was one of the representatives had anti-violent platform. And they came to the vigil. It was held on campus and it was endorsed by their Pan Health because they were part of Greek. Like over 5,000 kids came out for that vigil. And it was amazing, the support that our family got. Everyone was wearing yellow ribbons and it was beautiful. Everyone wanted to help try to find her. When the police did those first set of interviews, found out that her upstairs neighbor had heard screaming at 3:30 in the morning and somewhere around that time, and didn't call the police. And so they went over 48 hours without anything. And the time is ticking, right? Like when someone does something like this, it's those first 48 hours for evidence and all of that is so super critical. And we just didn't have that here. It's almost 4 days since the time that those screams happened.
I just want to touch on something here I think it's pretty important to talk about. I think that there's I don't know what the right word is, instinct for people when they hear something to just play it off. And I just want to challenge that notion a little bit. And I'm not meaning to shame the neighbor. I think we probably all wish that something else would have happened in that situation, that the police would have been called. But just for the listeners and even for myself to just think about that for a moment and process that and try to understand. It's probably better to be safe than sorry in a situation like that. When you hear somebody screaming at 3 a.m, if nothing's happening and the cops discover nothing's happening, then everybody goes about their business and everything's fine. But if something is happening, to get the authorities there, I think it's critical.
I think it would have been the difference between us having resolution and where we are today, to be honest. If someone would have called, I try to put myself into people's shoes because I think sometimes you don't want to be that person that calls in the middle of the night. What if you're wrong? What if I don't know. And there was other things, like the person's no longer with us. They had some run-ins with legal. So calling, and nobody trusts that anonymous means anonymous. But I really do believe that when everything in working with law enforcement, they don't, like, there's Good Samaritan stuff. They don't pursue, and they don't have access to the call per se. So
Right.
I can't think of any reason not to. I guess I can. You're afraid of embarrassing if you've misjudged the situation. But I think if you could prevent a family from going through what we've gone through, I think it's worth any embarrassment.
100% agree with you. I didn't mean to sidetrack you there. So we were talking about the neighbor not calling the police. And then I think that's where we left off.
Yeah. So they heard the screams. An initial report was horrible screams and didn't call. We finally got the okay to start the flyers and the community-wide search for her. Of course, in the meantime, between when I got to the apartment and that Friday, I had her address book. Back that time, your address books were a physical book that was not on your phone. And so I went through, I tried to call everybody and their brother. Have you seen her? Have you talked to her? It's really interesting because everyone was so kind, and I got to this one name, and this was the person who her move from her apartment, her studio apartment from one side of town, from Westerville, to her Governor Square apartment, her final area. And it was just like the couple months back, she hadn't been in that apartment very long at all. And he was like, he helped her, he helped move her, like all of that. And I went to call and he refused to take my call. He didn't even say, oh, no, I haven't seen her. So of course I haven't talked to him. Oh, he's not here. Like I didn't get any acknowledgement one way or the other. So I want to say maybe 2 days later, he puts his roommates on the phone and he's like, why do you keep harassing this person? What do you want? I'm like, I was so taken aback that when you call, they were friends. There's such a weird thing, and nothing had been released. It's not, oh my God, it's in the news, that kind of thing. It was just like, oh, hey, what's up? What's going on? It wasn't like if somebody calls you like a friend from a friend's phone. I don't know. It was basically telling me to quit harassing his friend, and I hadn't even talked to him once. It was the strangest interaction that I had ever, that even to this day, that I've ever had. I was like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to know if he had seen Stacey. Can you have him call me back to let me know if he's seen her? She's missing. Like we can't find her. And it was strange. I reported that to the police, but it was the strangest feeling. But that same person, he was the one who helped her move. That's not a typical reaction when you're like helping people out. Usually it's two-way communication, especially since they weren't boyfriend or girlfriend or anything. They were literally just friends. There was no, at least on her side, there was no romantic interest. It wasn't like that. It was like complete friendship on her side.
It's definitely a red flag, right? That kind of behavior of just completely avoiding any conversation, when if he was truly a friend, he would be interested in helping you in your search for answers. It doesn't make sense to have that reaction
unless maybe something happened that nobody knows about, but it's still, I don't see that being a possibility. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's just such a strange way to interact with you when you're really not even trying to bother him. Just, when was the last time you saw my sister? Not a big deal. I don't know. From the outside looking in, to me, it's a red flag.
That's how I felt too. It was just odd. It was weird. And there was nothing in the media. Like if it had already been in the media, and then I could say, oh my God, what is going, like I could see having a shock reaction or having a avoidant reaction.
Sure.
But like to someone who was actively a friend, actively helping her out, it just seemed strange. Like my last interaction was he was willing to drive across town with their furniture to help her move in, to not even answering the phone. That was just like, I couldn't wrap my head around it.
So from this point, I know that it took a while before Stacey was found. What happened with the investigation? And I'm also curious, I want to circle back just a little bit about, why did the police tell you to wait for a week? Did they give you a reason for that?
I'm trying to remember. I think they wanted to interview. They thought that maybe they could get the person, like they thought that it was probably somebody who was local and there. And they thought that if they were interviewing all the people, that if it wasn't out there, that maybe they would have more of a chance to be able to find the person responsible than if it were out and about in those first few days. I feel like that was part of the reason. There was no active community search or flyers or anything else at that point. And they did the AP, like the all points bolt, like all of that. Within the first 24 hours after seeing her apartment, what's the label for it? They labeled it as a missing, but I forget what it is. So it's not
Endangered?
Yeah, missing, endangered. They thought it was a homicide from the get-go, even though they couldn't label it as such. So I think it was like missing, endangered. I think that's the term that I'm looking for. But they have to wait a certain amount of time before they can label it as like a homicide investigation versus, because of course we didn't have her remains at that point.
Right.
Yeah, and it was almost 7 years from the time that she went missing to the time that she was discovered, which was almost a half hour, 40 minutes away from her apartment.
So it sounds like basically there was no leads after that initial investigation happened, and everything just stopped and slowed down. So what led to Stacey being discovered?
And Paula, please jump in because my brain likes to play tricks on me here. But it was a hunter's dog veered off or got lost, and they found the hunter's dog with her remains, I believe, in a wooded area on Saturday.
What we've been able to piece together, it was a mystery for a while. One of the first podcasters we worked with noticed that there were 2 different names reported finding her. And so he actually called one of them names, the man has died. The other one is still living, but he's in jail. So this podcaster actually called that man in jail. And he said that there were 2 men that found her that day. They were brother-in-laws, and they were out hunting together, and they were training a new puppy, and the puppy ran off. And so while they were searching for the puppy, the man who's currently in jail caught up to the puppy and looked down at what the puppy was rustling around in the leaves. And at first he thought he was looking at animal bones until he saw the skull. And that's when he knew it was human remains, and they immediately called the police.
Wow. It's just, I'm grateful that they found her. It's incredible. It sounds like it's a pretty remote area if they were out hunting. Do you know if it was private property or was it like public land?
Yes. It was private property. And I'm assuming these 2 men knew it was on the edge of a farm. And that was something that was a mystery for us because the farm had been brush cleared maybe a year after Stacey went missing, and nobody found her. So for a long time, there were rumors and speculations, and I thought this as well, that Stacey had maybe originally been somewhere else and been moved to this location. But the police are confident she was there the whole time. They could only carbon date within 2 years because where she was on the edge of a riverbed. And they said the vegetation around that area is going to be constantly dying off. And so it's hard to know. And with the brush clearing, what we have come to learn is the line of sight. When you're brush clearing, you're looking waist high. And if you're not expecting to see something like that on the ground, it's actually not all that difficult to believe that it went unnoticed because they're just not looking for it. And they're not even looking down at the ground. They're just looking at the brush that's waist high.
Wow. And I can't imagine, Danielle, I'm sure that you had a mixture of all of the emotions at once when your family found out that she had been found. I imagine it took some time to identify her.
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a report on the news when I was on my way into work, and they'd found someone and they thought that she was old. They thought the bones were older than they were, but I don't know. And I was listening. Anytime a body was found, I definitely was more tuned into the news at that point. I just had this really terrible feeling that it was her. And within a couple hours of it being released to the news, or at least that the finding was, I got a call at work and they called me at work to let me know. Honestly, I couldn't believe that. I was like, oh my God. I was like, please don't call me at work. Please come see me. Please don't. And it was like a voicemail. I was like, oh my God. I just died at work. Like I even thought about, I don't know. I broke down, and I don't break down at work too often. And I broke down.
Of course, it had to be grief and anger and frustration and relief and confirmation of your worst fears, like all of it in the same moment.
Yeah, I think I went back into shock for a little bit. It just didn't seem real for a little bit, and I disassociated a little bit so I could just function. And everything was it just was so surreal. This is 6 years later. As much as you think this moment's going to happen, and you think in order to deal with some of the things that you have to deal with, she had just graduated from college. She had student loans. She had all of these things. And so at the 5-year mark, my mom and I finally were like, we cannot deal with these bill collectors anymore. And we ended up having her declared legally dead. And we went through and we had a memorial service to try to force ourselves to finish off the grieving process. You have to find a way to live a normal life, because when you're always like listening to the radio every time somebody completely disappears from your life, and it's like vanishing like smoke, nothing, like here 1 minute and gone the next. And in order to allow yourselves to at least attempt a normal way of being, you have to do things I had to do things to try to emulate a normal grief cycle. And it works, but it's not a full solution to it. Obviously, you still have the waves of grief and the trauma every time you feel trauma so deeply, not only yours, but like every time somebody goes missing, every time a body is found. Are you going to be on there? Are you riding that roller coaster? Is somebody going to come to your door announcing that this is it? This is the real thing. And that was it. That was the culmination of that missing period, which was just, I can't even describe excuse my French, the hell that was. Like, I'm grateful. My mom lived with me at the time. She moved back to Columbus. She was moving back to Columbus. She was supposed to come and live this happy time with Stacey and I. Stacey just graduated. I did. And we were supposed to have all these fun times between the three of us. And that never got to happen. She did. She's, do you want to come back to Atlanta? You want to come back with us? And I was like, Mom, they're investigating. Who's she going to call? What if? And like, how can I leave her if she's going to call me, and maybe she'll get found and she'll need me? And it was very difficult to leave, even though this area was so devastating. I have a job and I'm young and I too have loans, and it's not like I could leave and not go to not having a job. I have to be able to feed myself. But I needed to be with my parents. Like I just couldn't function by myself at that point, for sure. Like I was not going out after dark. I was not like really living the way a mid-20-year-old's going to live. You're living in fear because your loved one disappeared and you have no idea what behaviors led to it. It's awful. Like it's not right to go through those because it's never the victim's fault. But like what can I do to keep myself safe? Now, everything that, you think from a thought perspective can happen actually happens, your floor is ripped out from underneath you. Everything that you thought to be solid is really quicksand. And you have to figure out how to make that as solid as possible to be able to live with the things that you're going through.
Just to cope
Yeah.
with it. Just to be able to wake up every day and keep going forward, because otherwise, what's the point? Completely understand. And I don't understand because my brother didn't go missing. I don't understand that part of it, but I can imagine and I can easily put myself in that situation if that happened in my brother's case. I think it's good for people to hear, because I think there may be this idea that once your loved one is found, that everything's better, right? And it isn't necessarily better. And I think even getting your day in court, it still doesn't change the fact that your loved one is never coming back. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't make it right. All it does is it makes sure that somebody else doesn't get hurt at the hands of this person.
And that's what I want. I don't want anyone else to go through what we went through. And I want her to have justice too. It's her life, her light, her candle was burnt, and she deserves that justice. And I don't want anyone else to die at his hands. I just don't. Like, I don't want any other person to go through what my family has gone through. Ever. Never.
Yeah, this is not a club that you want to be a part of. And it's not a club that you would wish other people to be a part of either, because if you are a part of it, you know that you wouldn't wish this on your worst enemy.
No, not even the person responsible.
And that's the difference, right? That's the difference right there. Let's talk about the investigation, what's happened, where it is right now, and then we'll get into what my listeners can do to help support and continue Stacey's fight.
Where is the investigation? Paula, can you help me?
So where the investigation is, where it has been since her remains were found, the police are absolutely certain they know who's responsible for this. He was someone that was looked at all along, but he flew under the radar of the initial investigative team. But when her remains were found, there was no more doubt. But what there is a lack of evidence, because first of all, the murderer had at least 48 hours between doing what he did and when the police were alerted that he did what he did. They have been on his heels for years. They get a little bit closer. I would say just about every year. They get just a little bit closer, but he stays out of their reach. There's no reason to believe at this point that he has murdered anyone else, but at least one other woman has been brutally attacked by him. And so what the police need is for someone who knows what happened to come forward. In my armchair sleuthing behind the scenes, trying to gather information about this person, one thing that I have learned is that he surrounds himself with people who feel sorry for him. He presents himself as a bird with broken wings. And so people want to shelter him, but what they're really doing is enabling him. And I think deep down they know that. I think deep down they've always known what he did and what he will continue to do if he's not stopped.
Wow. Essentially, we're in a holding pattern now with this investigation until new evidence is presented.
Exactly. Yes. Until someone comes forward and admits that they know what happened. And it's understandable to be afraid to come forward, to not want to betray your friend, or to think, I've been holding on to this for so long. I've got so much to lose if I come forward. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. I personally think, and Danielle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think that those who have information that are afraid to come forward are keeping themselves from, one, freeing themselves from carrying the weight of what he did. And they are missing the opportunity to be the hero in Stacey's story, bringing justice to her as well as delivering others who might be in his crosshairs.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that is what finishing Stacey's fight is all about. That's why we started our social media campaign.
That's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about what my listeners can do, aside from the ones who know something and haven't said anything. What can my listeners do to help with this fight?
The biggest things that we need are for people to interact with our content and share it. The way that the social media algorithms are set up to prevent people from being spammed, put awareness campaigns kind of shadow banned, because we have phone numbers on our posts because they're police phone numbers. We're trying to get information on a homicide victim. That's something that gets you a shadow ban. If you post too often, you get a shadow ban. If you don't post enough, they think you're a bot. And so our content, even though we have at this point just on Facebook almost 1,000 followers, I would say maybe 100 people see our content on a daily basis. Most of the other people don't see it. So one thing that we really need to do to get this information to spread and to be shared so that it might possibly get in front of somebody who's like, okay, it's time to break my silence. It needs to be interacted with and shared. The other thing, we do have a social media campaign going on right now. We had hoped to hire a private investigator, but that is maybe not going to be a realistic goal, cost prohibitive. So we are now looking more towards getting billboards to have Stacey's face in some strategic locations where she is smiling at people that have the ability to bring her justice.
And then, so if anybody wants to donate to that campaign, where can they go?
We've got the link on all of our socials, except for TikTok, but I know that there is a link on our Facebook page. There are links on our Twitter account. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram. All of those have direct links.
So what we'll do for you all is we'll go ahead and put the link to the social media pages as well as the GoFundMe in the show notes. So for you listeners that want to take your listening from a passive activity into some active advocacy, all you have to do is go over to the Facebook page or the Instagram page or any of those social media links in the show notes, interact, leave a comment, like it, share it, put it on your story, whatever you can do to help get this some traction so that the algorithm serves up these posts to more people. And then, of course, if you are financially able to donate, head over to GoFundMe and donate towards the campaign for billboards. As we're wrapping up, Danielle and Paula, is there anything else that you want to say, anything else that you want to share as a final thought before we end this conversation?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for putting Stacey out there, sharing her story. It means the absolute world to my mom and myself and my family. And I just appreciate the time that you took today. Thank you so much. And thanks to all your listeners for taking the time to listen to my sister's story. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and for sharing your story so vulnerably and so authentically. Thank you for sharing the beautiful life of your sister with us. We now all feel and understand a little bit better how tremendous of a loss it is for you and your family. I know that we can't understand fully, but just getting that sense of who she was, it was really beautiful. Thank you both for your time and your honesty.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder in My Family, and I hope that you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.